Hey all, welcome to Monday, welcome to Countdown Day, and today we're going to be looking at the top 10 Transformers voices. Now that doesn't mean the top 10 voice actors, we did that before. This is the voice coming out of the character, right? So we have an animation model for a particular character and the voice coming out of it. So voters were asked this time around to give us the character and the voice actor. This is going to be the top 10 Transformers voices in the latest GotBot Counts Down. Hey all, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, your most humble of hosts, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. As always, please like, comment, share, of course subscribe, and while you are at it, light 'em up, baby. Hit that notification bell, please. It helps me out a ton and it lets you know when content of all sorts goes up here on the channel. Check out Machinery of Man, The Everything Factor, all the groups that I'm either a mod or an admin for, as well as all of my social media links. All of that is in the description down below, also in the description down below. And if you're in a position to help the channel to grow, you can use the donate link, check us out on Patreon, see what we have to offer to you through spring, or of course, hit the join button at any given time and become a channel member. And today, here in Canada, it's actually a holiday, because September the 30th, which fell on a Saturday this year, is the Day of Truth and Reconciliation, which really harkens back to the atrocities of the residential school era. I'm wearing my Every Child Matters shirt. If you don't know the history of Every Child Matters and what happened in residential schools and why it's important to recognize this day, then I certainly encourage you to do some research of your own on your own time. On my time, we're going to get into the list. By the way, this is actually a really personal day for my family and whatnot, because my wife is Indigenous, so this affects family members of hers and ergo family members of mine. But all that being said, while I encourage you to kind of look at this some social justice, so to speak, let's get into the list. Of course, we're going to do as we always do. We're going to do our honorable mentions first. So these are characters and actors. You'll see as I say them what I mean, where voters said that's the best voice for this character. It matches. I can't imagine somebody else doing it. Our honorable mentions include Frank Welker's G1 Megatron, as well as Leonard Nimoy's Galvatron in Transformers the movie, and Scott McNeil's Waspinator. All of those, wonderful, great, no problem with any of them. They didn't make the list. All are classic characters, and I would venture to say that a lot of you that just heard those three honorable mentions are saying, man, oh man, if they didn't make the list, then who possibly did? Well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to kick things off with number 10 first. Coming in at number 10, we have Steve Blum and Starscream from Transformers Prime. And you know what? Like, Steve Blum is a very prolific voice actor and actor. He's been everything from Duke and Zartan in G.I. Joe Resolute, right up to Wolverine, for example, and Green Goblin within like different Marvel series. But we here will probably know him best as Starscream. He has voiced Starscream a couple of times, most notably Transformers Prime, which was a bit of a different take. He didn't try to emulate the late great Chris Latta, but he made the character his own. Still sounding somewhat full of class, because he enunciates his words very clearly, but also having that lower voice that when you hear it, you know that there's something sinister underneath what Starscream is saying. And when he's really afraid, the voice goes way up, the scream comes out, and you see, you hear, you feel the cowardice. I feel like Steve Blum was able to really encapsulate everything that personifies what Starscream is supposed to be by pulling on different abilities within his own voice range. Yeah, how can you argue with it? He absolutely redefined a classic Transformers character to make it all his own. Steve Blum and Transformers Prime Starscream takes the number 10 slot. Coming in at number 9, many have tried and most have failed. A couple have come a little bit close to matching Greg Berger's Grimlock, specifically Season 1 Grimlock. There were some people who just said Berger Grimlock, and there were some people who said Season 1, because then Grimlock became goofy. You can't blame that on the voice or the actor, because that was the writing. When it comes to the voice for Grimlock, while we've had different ones, some of them intelligent, some of them not so intelligent, everybody always says the same thing. Where is the "Me Grimlock" tagline? And where is that kind of gruff sound that his voice, that gravelly sound that his voice has? The whole reason we identify that as belonging to Grimlock, as belonging to the leader of the Dinobots, is because of Greg's tremendous work oh so long ago. Everybody that comes along got to live up to that lineage. He was the first, and in many fans' eyes, the greatest. And that's why Greg Berger's take on Grimlock takes the number 9 slot. And the next on our list pretty much could have made his entire career out of one word. Yes. By way of Beast Wars Megatron, of course I'm talking about David Kaye in Beast Wars Megatron. This is Transmetal 2 Beast Wars Megatron. Just because, why not take him down instead of the Dino Lad? I like the Dragon Lad. He's so bright and shiny. Big fan of this. Anyway, I digress. Again, he was able to present Megatron in a completely different take than we had in G1. He made the character his own, and we learned that indeed this was not the G1 Megatron. This was somebody who paid homage to him by taking that same name. Ergo, it made sense that it didn't sound like the original at all. It's not the same guy. He had an air of class, an air of sophistication about him with the way that he was able to speak rather clearly and deeply. But he also had a certain sinister nature to him, and when he wanted to be cruel to his underlings, he done it with not just bravado, but also an air of grace and a maniacal giggle and laugh sometimes thereafter. Whenever he was making a long soliloquy and explaining his nefarious plan to either destroy humanity or destroy the Ark or make sure that the Great War never happened or whatever else he's doing, the gravitas behind David Kaye's voice delivers every single time. It just so happens that he also voiced other characters, such as, I think, Animated Optimus Prime, if I'm not mistaken. But everybody who voted for David Kaye specifically said, of all the characters he did, his take on Beast Wars Megatron, still a classic, still the best. And whenever you hear anything other than David Kaye, it just plain doesn't sound right. We heard a different voice actor in a completely different take for kind of this character in the Netflix War for Cybertron trilogy, and it fell completely flat for most fans because they said, David Kaye is my guy when it comes to Beast Wars Megatron. Who am I to lie? He takes the number 8 slot. I know I just said lie, but I meant to say argue. I'm talking so quickly right now because at number 7 we have John Machida Jr. and Blur. John Machida Jr., known to a lot of fans as the Micro Machine guy. We all know that he speaks very, very quickly, and I'm not going to try and keep up that pace that I just started out with. But nevertheless, when you have someone that's supposed to be as fast as Blur, when you have someone who's known as being the fastest car in existence, I know, fictional, but still, when he has that moniker to live up to, then you would think, yes, just as he moves around in the movie on the screen with a trail behind him because he's moving so fast, which we didn't see in Season 3, by the way, it only makes sense that his voice would be rapid as well. And we've had a couple of takes where somebody else done the voice, and it worked out fine, and he's kind of presented then as quick and brash, but he doesn't speak as fast. I think when most people think of Blur, they think of the hyper sped up, and that's the only way I can really describe it, the hyper sped up voice of John Machida Jr. And you know what? It is absolutely distinguishable, it is absolutely unique, and it absolutely matches one of the most unique Transformers going. Blur, via John Machida Jr., takes the number 7? Yeah, 7 slot. It only makes sense at number 6 that we would have a musician do the voice of Jazz via Scatman Crothers. Of course, Scatman Crothers known for his scat style of singing, right? Which I don't know if is an offshoot from jazz exactly. I'm not sure what the relationship is between, you know, jazz as a musical medium and then I feel like related genre of scat, and I don't know, maybe somebody can clarify it that knows both of those genres better than me. Nevertheless, even as a child, I felt like the voice that came out of Jazz completely matched the character. I knew it was Scatman Crothers, and I'd seen him on other things, and I knew of who he was as a celebrity, I suppose. And you know what? Yeah, his voice just matched. It was gravelly. It was... It sounded like a voice that you would hear in a jazz bar. And since his name's Jazz, it would make sense that Jazz would be at a jazz bar. You see where I'm going here? Everything goes back to music and jazz. Yeah, Scatman Crothers. And his particular take on G1 Jazz takes the number 6 slot. And now a hush falls over the crowd as we reach the ever-popular, ever-coveted halfway mark. And at the halfway mark, we go back to a character that we've talked about previously in the honorable mentions by way of Scott McNeil. Except this time he's paired with Dinobot, one of the most favorite characters, perhaps the greatest of all character arcs in terms of going from, you know, antagonist to redemption to ultimate protagonist and hero. It must have been a real honor for Scott McNeil to play this character. And again, while there have been others who have tried, I think everybody tries to emulate that sort of sharp, razor sharp type of gravelly voice that Scott McNeil uses for Dinobot that has become absolutely iconically associated with the character. How can you argue with it? Man, you know what? Shout out to Scott McNeil. He is so good and has such a broad range. We often talk about Frank Welker and all the voices that he has done and able to do. Scott McNeil's right up there too, man. And you know what? Dinobot proves it takes the number 5 slot. Coming in at number 4, we go back to Frank Welker, who I just mentioned, and Soundwave, G1 Soundwave. A few people voted for, say, the Prime Soundwave, which I thought was a great take as well. But most people said, G1 Welker, Soundwave. Even though the vocoder was used, and we know that there's a lot of modulation in Soundwave's voice, we also know that without it, what he sounds like, which is kind of like this. And I can't really do it. I'm not Frank Welker, right? But we also heard that kind of version of Soundwave without the vocoder in one of the season 3 episodes where they forgot to use it, and in was it Revenge of the Fallen when he's the satellite? Does he use that voice? Maybe Dark of the Moon. Maybe both. I'm not sure. But Frank Welker's very bass, I don't know how to even say that, growly take on a voice that they were able to modulate enough to sound like Soundwave. Yeah, man, how can you argue with it? A lot of work went into getting the unique and distinctive sound that is Soundwave. And some 39 plus now, years later, we still know that voice, and we still know it comes from Frank Welker. Yeah, Soundwave, classic character, classic voice, takes the number 4 slot. And now we are into the top 3. And I'm going to say this before I go on because I'll forget it if I don't say it. 4, 3, 2, and 1, all of them at one point or another was number 1. All of them are separated by 1 vote. The top 4 was wildly, wildly close voting that could have gone either way for anyone. So the separation between Soundwave just then and now number 3 is 1 vote. The separation from this character that I'm about to do and number 1 is 2 votes. The separation of this character, number 2, is 1 vote. I wanted to throw that out there because this is some of the closest voting we've ever had. Coming in at number 3, I don't think it's going to surprise many people. It's certainly Starscream Wife's favorite, and Chris Latta, or Lada, as some people like to pronounce it, Starscream. How can you argue it? I mean, I feel like he's one of the greatest voice actors because of Starscream and Cobra Commander. If he did nothing else, everybody would still tout him as one of the greatest. And as much as people have tried, myself included, over the years to sort of emulate that to a degree, man, oh man, not many have been able to come even close. A couple here and there. I think Frank Todaro is pretty good. He's not Chris, but he's not bad. Frank's not bad. I like him okay. Steve Bloom went something totally different and done his own thing. But man, you'll never be able to argue with the effectiveness of G1 Starscream. It sounds like he's complaining and whining. It sounds sniveling. He can also sound cowardly, but at the same time when he's yelling and threatening, he sounds full of rage. It is a very versatile voice that's able to convey a wide range of emotions. And I would say that Starscream's emotions are so all over the map that, you know what, he can feel anything at any time. He needed the right actor to bring that character, to bring that script to life. And they found it with Chris. G1 Starscream takes the number 3 slot. I'm not even going to try and hide this. At number 2, we have Unicron and Orson Welles. Yes, Transformers Prime had a voice for Unicron. Yes, we recently had someone else do the voice in Rise of the Beast. Yes, we've had a voice for him in, I think he had a voice in the War for Cybertron trilogy. I don't remember. But at the end of the day, everybody who knows Unicron will always say the same thing. One, he should be his own planet rather than the core of a planet. That's debatable. But 2, it has to be Orson Welles. It has to be that sense of dread and foreboding with that sense of gravitas also in the voice, and that very low baritone voice when he calls on Megatron, right? Nobody calls Megatron. Well, it pleases me to be the first. Like, for what ended up being a throwaway role for Orson Welles, for what ended up being his last role, for a guy who didn't care about it, man, he still knocked it out of the ballpark. That shows just how good Orson Welles was. That even now, some 40 years later, he passed away shortly after this, we still say, Unicron, Orson Welles, nobody's done it better, and nobody could have done it better back then. Takes the number 2 slot. And now here we are at the very tippy top, number 1. And it's separated from number 4 by 3 votes. It's separated from number 3 by 2 votes. And it's separated from number 2, Unicron and Orson Welles, by 1 vote. Made all the difference, man. Made all the difference. And number 1, which wasn't number 1 for a long time, but it pulled it out, eked it out at the end. Number 1 is Peter Cullen and Optimus Prime. Everybody said that this was going to by far win, and I expected that too when I started this list. But for the majority of the voting time when I was counting, he was not winning. He was about number 5. And the last couple of locations where I done my counting, and like I vary it up, like what order I counted in. It's all over social media, everywhere. So I take it from so many sources, it's not even funny. But the last couple really put a push on for G1 Optimus Prime and Frank Welker. Now, not Frank Welker, Peter Cullen. Now, to be fair, it was the G1 with Peter Cullen that won. However, there were votes for Transformers Prime with Peter Cullen, and there were votes separately for Bayverse Peter Cullen. So, I mean, I guess Peter is, the voice of the franchise, and there's no shock there. But for a long time, G1 Optimus wasn't winning, even though I thought he was going to take it wildly by far. This was probably the most fun I had actually counting up votes, because it wasn't just like a couple of close races. Like the entire top of the list could have gone to anyone. Soundwave could just as easily have been in the top spot as Starscream, as Unicron, or as Optimus Prime. Either way, those 4 seem to be the tops. Other ones that had votes: Terzo's Black Arachnia, Burton's Animated Megatron, Burton's Shockwave, Cullen Prime Optimus Prime, Gary Chalk's Optimus Primal, Ron Perlman's Optimus Primal, Dan Gilvezian's Bumblebee, whoever voiced Crimzeek, Stax Magnus, Angels Magnus, right? Jack Angels Magnus or Robert Stax Magnus, G1 Mirage, Cullen's Ironhide, Beast Wars Inferno, who I think was Barnes. I think Barnes done the voice for that. Fred Willard and Animated Swindle. Yeah, baby. G1 Swindle. Dobson's Armada Starscream. Darian Norse's Knockout from Transformers Prime. Yeah, baby. For sure. Welker's Prime Megatron. Let's go over here and see if we can get just a few more. Oh, Jeffrey Combs Ratchet, absolutely. Hugo Weaving's Megatron from the movie. Foxworthy's Ratchet, which I think was... Did Foxworthy do Animated Ratchet? I don't remember which one he did now. Bernhardt's Devastator. Rhinox. G1 Blaster, and I don't know who done the voice there, but it was a great voice as well. Let's see, Cop, and whoever voiced G1 Omega Supreme, I didn't bother to look it up. Earthspark Tarantulas, Scott McNeil's Rat Trap, and one last one, Prime RC. Yeah, absolutely. Some great ones there, and them and more. So many wonderful voices. I mean, it's so funny because I feel like next week's is probably going to be worse voices. And worse voices means the voice just does not match the animation. For example, I cannot stand the voice that they picked for Cybertron Metroplex. Now, I don't like Unicron Trilogy anyway, but isn't he like Irish or Scottish or something? And like, there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. That's great. Good. It just doesn't, I don't feel like it matches that character. I think I expected his voice to be a lot lower and slower than what it is. I'm fine with the accent. I just think the cadence was off and it never landed with me. But that is another time. This was best voices, and I think that the fans really nailed it. Some great ones, and even the ones that didn't make the list, some excellent ones. Like, can you picture anybody else really doing justice to Black Arachnia? Can anybody really think that G1RC would sound any better as anyone but Sue Blue? I don't know. I mean, maybe you do, maybe you don't. It's this one totally subjective. But that's some of the fun of it. As subjective as it is, I made it as objective as possible by basing it all on your votes. Have your say. One person, one vote, and that was this week's Top 10. I appreciate you guys coming by, giving me some of your extremely valuable time. I do know how important it is to you. If you're in a position to help the channel to grow, you can use the donate link. Check us out on Patreon. See what we have to offer to you through Spring, or of course, hit the join button at any given time and become a channel member. While you're at it, hit the subscribe button, stick around, have some fun with us here on the channel, and don't forget that somehow, some way, each and every single solitary day, you right there, you do make a difference in the world, and I look forward to the next time that you and I get together to have another visit, either in the live streams on Thursday nights at the stop motion premieres or the old-fashioned way right here inside the videos.